What if I told you that one of the greatest Muslim commanders in history was once completely crushed by a teenage king who was dying of leprosy? In 1177, Saladin was already becoming the most powerful leader in the Middle East. His armies controlled Egypt and Syria, and his ultimate goal was to capture Jerusalem and destroy the Crusader kingdom forever. When he marched into the kingdom of Jerusalem with thousands of soldiers, victory seemed guaranteed. But something unbelievable happened. A small army of Crusaders, led by a sick teenage king named Baldwin IV, charged straight into Saladin's massive force, and what followed became one of the most shocking upsets in medieval warfare. And by the end of this story, you'll understand how one bold decision turned a hopeless situation into a legendary victory. In the late 12th century, the Middle East was locked in a struggle between the Crusader states and the rising Muslim power under Saladin. Saladin had already achieved something remarkable. He had united Egypt and Syria, two regions that had been divided for decades. With this new power base, he was slowly surrounding the Crusader states. Jerusalem, the most important city in the Christian world, sat directly in his path. In 1177, Saladin believed the time was right to strike. He launched a massive invasion into the Kingdom of Jerusalem with a powerful army, possibly numbering more than 20,000 soldiers. His forces swept through the countryside, burning villages and capturing towns. Most of the Crusader army was far away in the north, leaving the kingdom dangerously exposed. The road to Jerusalem was open. Inside the city, panic spread. But the young king refused to surrender. Baldwin IV was only 16 years old at the time, and he was already suffering from leprosy. The disease had begun weakening his body, but his mind and courage remained strong. Instead of hiding behind the walls of Jerusalem, Baldwin made a bold decision. He would attack. The king gathered every soldier he could find. The force was incredibly small, perhaps around 500 knights and a few thousand infantry. Compared to Saladin's army, it was tiny. But Baldwin knew something important. Saladin believed the Crusaders were too weak to challenge him. And that assumption created an opportunity. The Crusader army marched quickly along the coast and then inland towards Saladin's position near a place called Montgisard, not far from modern-day Ramla. Meanwhile, Saladin's army was relaxed and spread out. His soldiers were busy looting villages and gathering supplies. Many of them did not expect a major battle that day. Then suddenly, scouts delivered shocking news. A Crusader army was approaching. At first, Saladin may not have been worried. A few hundred knights did not seem like a serious threat to his massive army. But Baldwin had no intention of fighting a slow battle. He planned a sudden, devastating strike. Before the charge, the Crusaders reportedly brought out a sacred relic, the true cross, believed by many Christians to be part of the cross on which Jesus was crucified. Seeing the relic raised high inspired the soldiers. Chroniclers described the army praying before the attack, believing they were fighting for the survival of the Holy Land. Then Baldwin gave the order. The Crusader knights charged. Heavy cavalry was the most powerful weapon in medieval warfare. When armored knights charged at full speed, they could smash through enemy lines like a human battering ram. The Crusader charge slammed into Saladin's forces before they had fully organized. Chaos exploded across the battlefield. Saladin's army was scattered and unprepared. Some units tried to form defensive lines, but the sudden impact of the knights shattered their formations. Dust filled the air. Horses crashed into soldiers. Steel collided with shields. The attack created panic. Once confusion spreads in a large army, things can collapse quickly. And that's exactly what happened. The Crusaders kept pushing forward, targeting commanders and key positions. Saladin's army began to break apart. What was supposed to be a confident invasion suddenly turned into a desperate retreat. Saladin himself barely escaped the battlefield. His bodyguards had to fight their way out as the Crusaders pressed the attack. Many of his soldiers were killed or captured, and the rest fled into the desert. The Battle of Montgisard was over. And against all odds, the Crusaders had won. The victory shocked the entire region. Saladin, who would later become famous for defeating the Crusaders, had suffered a humiliating defeat. It showed that even the strongest commanders could be vulnerable to surprise and bold tactics. For the Crusaders, the victory became legendary. At the center of that legend stood Baldwin IV. Despite his illness, the young king had personally led the charge that saved his kingdom from destruction. Chroniclers described him riding into battle while already suffering from the early stages of leprosy. The victory at Montgisard turned him into a symbol of courage and determination. But the battle did not end the war. Saladin was a patient and determined leader. Instead of rushing into another risky invasion, he spent the next several years rebuilding his strength. He improved his army, strengthened alliances, and carefully prepared for future campaigns. Meanwhile, Baldwin's health continued to decline. Leprosy slowly robbed him of his strength. Over time he lost feeling in his limbs, and eventually he could no longer ride a horse into battle. Yet he continued ruling the kingdom for years. The problem was what would happen after he died. The kingdom of Jerusalem was divided by political rivalries. Without Baldwin's leadership, the fragile unity inside the Crusader states began to crumble. When Baldwin IV died in 1185, the kingdom quickly fell into chaos. Saladin waited patiently for the right moment. Just 2 years later, in 1187, the Crusader army suffered a catastrophic defeat at the Battle of Hattin. Soon after, Saladin captured Jerusalem itself. The victory at Montgisard had delayed the inevitable, but it had not stopped it forever. Still, the battle remains one of the most incredible moments in Crusader history. A small army of knights, led by a sick teenage king, defeated one of the most powerful forces in the Middle East. It was a victory built on surprise, courage, and perfect timing. And it proved an important lesson that still applies to warfare today. Sometimes the size of the army matters far less than the moment you choose to strike. If you enjoyed this story of one of history's most shocking battlefield upsets, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more epic moments from the past. And if you want to see the battle where Saladin finally took revenge and crushed the Crusaders, check out the next video on your screen.